Hey guys, alright, so on this video I'm going to do something that I have personally never seen before. I did a quick look on the interwebs, couldn't quite find it. It probably does exist, I just didn't see it. And I'm going to call it the urban river table. So a regular river table, you have a slab of wood and some epoxy, and then you make it look like the epoxy is a river in the table. Instead of using the wood, I'm going to use concrete and rebar, and then use the epoxy as the river. So it looks like an urban river table. Will this work? I hope so. Because I've never done concrete like this, never used rebar in concrete, probably should have, never have, and I've never done an epoxy pour like this. So buckle up, let's get to it, let's get nasty. First thing that I need to do is I'm going to need to make a mold. Now I want this mold to be used for the concrete and for the epoxy, that way I know that the mold will be the same and it'll work out great. Instead of building two molds, hopefully just build the one mold. So I'm going to use some melamine. I had bought some 1/2 inch melamine over here, and I had some 1/4 inch melamine just lingering around for some reason, so we're going to use that too. So we're going to cut the melamine down and make ourselves a mold. Taping the bottom of the mold to cover that seam. For the concrete, I don't think it matters a whole lot because I think the concrete's going to be too thick to really pour out a whole lot. Plus, I'm going to do it on a flat surface where it shouldn't pour out. The main thing will be is trying to seal it for the epoxy pour. Is this the worst circle that you've ever seen in your life? Yeah, it probably is. Is this probably the worst mold you've ever seen in your life? Depends on if you've seen other molds. I don't know. We're going to give this a shot, tater tot, though. I think I'll be making new sides. I really don't think it's going to be reusable. Crazier things have happened. If I got to make new sides, that's fine. As long as the bottom is the same, then the shape will be the same. The epoxy pour is only going to be a small section of it anyway. We'll take this up, and then we'll go start cutting some rebar. What do you think? Pretty nice, huh? I know, beautiful. So I wish I would have did this before I put the sides on for the mold and ignore how crappy it is, but I made a grid kind of in here so I would know how big to cut my rebar so everything would kind of look okay, I guess. So now we can cut the rebar, now that I know the sizes that I need to put here. Alright, grid pattern is in place with the rebar. Now I'm going to take some of this galvanized wire, cut some pieces, and then wire it all together so it'll stay put. Yeah, those little ties just weren't working, so I'm just going to tack weld them in. So now I need to figure out how I want this river to flow, and basically I want to figure out what I want exposed of the rebar, where I want it to come in, come out. So I'm going to do is I'm just take a piece of cardboard, I'm going to figure out a pattern, cut it out, finalize it with my pattern, and then I'll cut it out in a couple pieces of foam. Fatten that out. It's pretty good. So we'll take this cardboard template, modify it a little bit, and then I'll put it over on the styrofoam. I've got two of them out. Arr, where did my marker go? Oh, it's right there. Okay, before we start mixing concrete, let me show you the form and the setup and everything like that. Explain exactly what I'm doing. So here it is. So here's the plan. Is I have foam here, foam there. I shoved a little bit in there just as a spacer. The idea is that I'll fill all of this with concrete on both sides, and then I'll pull the foam hopefully out on both sides, and that should have a thin enough spot where I can chip away the concrete, expose the rebar. This is so this doesn't float. I don't know if this is going to work. I kind of got the idea from someone that I did see who did this kind of table. They just didn't fill it with the epoxy. They just exposed the rebar. So I'm going to give this a shot. We're going to mix with some concrete and we're going to put it in. And then we're going to just see what happens. Okay, it is a absolutely beautiful sunny day. I thought we should do this out here instead of in the shop because I don't want the shop to get disgusting when I do concrete everywhere. So we're going to mix the concrete, put her in there. Now I got I'll show you. I got the concrete that's got fiber reinforcement. Didn't get the countertop stuff because that stuff was stupid expensive. So we're gonna mix this up. Normally I mix up way too much or not enough. See where we get on this. Just breathe it all in. Breathe it all in. I just realized that I don't know if that melamine is going to hold up to the water moisture in here. Okay, something tells me that this did not go well at all. Normally when I do concrete, I mix it, I put it in, and then I have time to work it around. Because when I was putting it into the form, I don't think it was getting under all the rebar like I wanted to. So my plan was to put it in, move the camera, which was getting hot, and then I could get dirty and work all of it in, and then take the Sawzall and bump the sides to get the air up. That was my plan. So I put it in, grabbed the camera, put it inside, went back out, and it was already like set. Like I couldn't manipulate it at all. Also, it is supposedly maximum strength fiber reinforced. All it had was little tiny rocks in there. So I don't know what that's all about. It feels like it's just all stone. We'll give it a few days and we'll see what happens. So it says a quick setup time of 4 hours for a normal slab 4 inches thick. This isn't 4 inches thick. It's been like 3 hours. I'm getting antsy to see how screwed I am. So I'm just gonna start slowly pull it apart, see what we got going on. So it doesn't look great, but it looks better than what I thought. So here's the problem. This thing is so pebbly. Like there's the rebar, it just looks like crap all through here. The river portion is got nothing in it, which I guess would be technically good, I guess. Here's my plan to fix this. I bought regular concrete, and my plan is I'm going to flip this thing upside down into this foam, and then depending on what we find, frost it like a cake with the new concrete. Now, the only reason I think this one might be okay is because there's so many rocks and bumps and stuff in here that it'll give this concrete something to adhere to. But basically frost it like a cake with the new concrete. The top, we'll see what happens with the top. It also could fall apart when I go to flip it. Oh, that filled a lot better than what I thought it was going to. That's not too bad. Look at this. I mean, it's got holes, but I wish it all looked like that. What I might do, I might just make this the top. That might be a good idea. But we're just gonna frost this thing like a little cake. It doesn't look the prettiest, but maybe. I know you can't concrete over concrete normally, so I'm hoping, like again, with all those nooks and crannies, that it'll now hold. Not confident. Did I get cement all over the shop and the workbench? Yes, I did. I'm going to give this thing a few days. I'm going to leave it alone, and I'll check back in a few days. Okay, so it's been 4 days. That hurt. It is hard. I think first things is let's remove the styrofoam to reveal our river. Okay, I mean it worked in regards to the way I wanted it to. We have a void here that we can fill with epoxy. But what I gotta do is I gotta try to make this thing not so crap-a-bola. So I'm gonna try to kind of smooth this out, I think. I don't know. Just trying to make not crap. And because I don't know how any other way to smooth down concrete, I'm gonna try to sand it with 60 grit sandpaper. Probably surprise to no one. I'm gonna have to get a masonry grinding wheel because the sander, that was stupid. A grinding wheel, kind of also stupid. Can we save it? I don't know yet, but I'm gonna spend more money to try. So I'm gonna order one of those, and then I'll see you guys when I get one. And thank you to Amazon. We're ready to go. So let's start grinding this. This should be the key. So that was absolutely the right grinder attachment. It made this thing nice, flat, and it made the shop a complete utter mess. If you can barely hear me, it's because I have the air purifier, the fan, and the exhaust on right now because the shop got disgusting. Hindsight, should have did that outside. Didn't. Okay, but now we gotta address this, right? The river area. I don't like how it looks because it looks too perfect. And for the way this has been going, I don't think I should be able to use the word perfect. So I'm gonna actually chip this out to kind of look like it's been chipped out. But this is nice. I like this. I used sander on this too. I'm not too thrilled with how the edges still look, but let's just break this part up. Hopefully just these little parts. And I don't have a big chisel, so we're gonna use a big screwdriver and then just a hammer. And I really hope this thing doesn't just disintegrate. So, before we do the first part of the epoxy, which is like a penetrating sealing type coat, I want to get everything that's loose off of this and try to clean it up as much as possible. I'm going to do the penetrating coat, sealant coat, because I'm hoping to control the amount of dust that will actually be in the final pour of the epoxy. I'm going to wire brush this thing, take the air hose, blow it off before we start play with epoxy. I don't know if this is right. This is just what I'm doing. It's not often that I do a build where I have to clean up in between every little thing. So that's something new. And now we are finally at the point where I can start mixing up some epoxy. We're going to do that sealant coat like I talked about there. The dog's frisbee is underneath the tripod, so you're shaking everywhere. So I'm going to do that, do the penetrating one. We're just going to brush on where the river is going to run, brush on all over all of the exposed rebar, and hopefully that part works. So I have no idea if this is going to work. I'm just winging this whole thing, going by what I've seen on the internet. So this should penetrate, seal up, and then allow my actual epoxy pour to not have a bunch of impurities in it. Now the problem going into the epoxy pour is I have no way to degas these things to get the bubbles out. So there's a fear there. There's a fear there. And I'm dripping epoxy everywhere. Well, I'm still very, very dirty. I should have wore gloves doing the epoxy. That was stupid. So the epoxy is all on. I went and did the whole top. Now, I plan on sanding that off. I just did that to fill some of the voids that was in there. And then when I was doing it, I remembered how hard sanding epoxy can be. So that's cool. But everything is now hopefully sealed up where all the deep pour is going to go. And it is like a cave dripping all over my floor. But we'll give this a few days, or at least a day to set up, and then we'll come back out and then get this thing back in the mold for the pour. Well, while that dries, why don't we work on the base? Seal the mold so that I don't just dump epoxy everywhere. Now, it's probably not going to fit in the mold since I frosted it like a cake with more concrete, though I did grind some stuff off. So we're just going to try my best to seal it and get it ready for ideally tomorrow to pour. Because I'm going to want to let that silicone kind of set up. Flip it over. The good thing about this is it only weighs 1,000,000 pounds. I'm going to do a huge heavy bead of caulk right around that edge, so hopefully you can keep that epoxy right in there. I didn't mean to spit when I did that. So confidence level that it won't leak. A solid 1, maybe a 2. Done everything that I can think of. I've used an entire tube of caulk on this thing, and it looks terrible. But I also should have used clear. Hindsight is 30/70. I raised up the sides here because the form no longer was right after I added the ones up here. So, in theory, we should be tight. I also silicone the entire perimeter as I put the mold back together. And then I also ran Gorilla Tape all around the bottom seam after I ran another bead of caulk on that seam on the bottom. So I guess we wait for this caulk to dry, and then tomorrow we do it. Alright, it is the time that I have been dreading since the first time I thought of this project months ago, and that is to start the epoxy pour. I'm going to do this in 2 different pours because I think 2 inches will be too thick for this epoxy. So I'll pour the first one. That'll also allow me to know if I have any major leaks without wasting a ton of epoxy. I am nervous. I also don't have mixing cups, so we're really just winging this bad boy. I have a popcorn bucket to do the final mix into. I'm going to fill both of these up with part A, part B. In there, mix it. I don't have a degasser, so doing a thinner pour from what I've heard will also help reduce bubbles. Alright, so there is a ton of bubbles. They're kind of coming up to the surface and popping occasionally. I'm going to let this sit for probably about a half hour, and then I'll come back through with the torch again and try to blast those bubbles out again. I went a little bit deeper than what I originally anticipated going, but which is fine because I think I'm just about a little over halfway, which will be good. I just poured this about 5 minutes ago, and it doesn't seem to be decreasing, which is very good. That means my mold would be ideally holding. I ended up putting it on this foam
and wrapping it with this plastic. So I'm hoping that the foam will help sink in and seal a little better. And then the plastic I was hoping would kind of hold it if it did leak. So, all right, it hardened up and it looks great. It did leak out the back over here a little bit. So that might be a problem, but I'm hoping that I put enough in that it's going to basically seal all of the leaks. That was kind of my plan, my thought process. See if this happens. So I'm going to try to do this in one more pour. Realistically, I'm guessing that I'm going to have some leak out and have to do another pour. So I'm trying to do this early enough in the day because it says to leave 6 hours in between coats. So I'm going to scuff this up, clean it up, and then lay some more in. So I hit this with 220 like I said to do. And then I cleaned it up, so hopefully we have no more dust in there. So I'm going to mix up the second batch here, just like I did the first, except the difference is I'm going to add a little bit of blue inside there. And I'm going to do that because it had said before, I've heard that you do that way in case the epoxy over time wants to yellow, you won't see it. This type of epoxy says that you can do a new coat within 6 hours. If you do wait over 6 hours, then you need to sand. So what I'm hoping for is I'm hoping to put this coat in, and then if it's not the last one, I have enough time in the day to do one in 6 hours and not wait till the next day. So that's what I'm trying to mix. I'm trying to go with a light blue. That way it'll still be transparent enough that you can see the rebar and the concrete, but if it does yellow a little bit, you won't quite see that.
I think the girls with their nails done now.
So it's been a few days. I'm a little dirty from the next video that I'm filming, but I want to pop this thing on the mold and see how it looks now. Obviously, I got it from the plastic around it. I did that a couple days ago, and I was just trying to see if it leaked. There was a couple of leaks around the back, but nothing substantial. It definitely will need to be sanded because the concrete is higher here, and then the epoxy is higher than this concrete. We'll have to do that, but I just want to get this thing out of the mold and see how it looks demolded. This might not be as easy as I thought. Alright. It's just hitting me right now that I was going to use a silicone as a mold release. And it's literally right now I'm realizing I didn't do that. So this could be a problem. Hercules! So if forgetting the mold release is the biggest mistake I make on this, that's still a pretty terrible mistake because as you can kind of see from what I've already got removed, I'm 45 minutes on this thing. And I knew to use a mold release. I remembered that I needed to use one. I just didn't use one. So after an hour and a half, we are finally out of the mold. And it was not pleasant to do. Found out that I thought a big chisel was the secret. No, screwdriver, that was the secret. So it is out of the mold. Now it did say to give it 5 full days of curing before you start sanding everything on it. So I still have another 2 days because I'm so antsy. But I want, look at that. Look how cool it is. You can see my hand through there. Pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to give it a couple more days. All right, now this thing has been demolded. It's time to start grinding, sanding, getting this thing to look hopefully not like a giant turd. So that's what I'm going to do, is hopefully not make this thing look like a giant turd.
And after almost 2 hours of sanding, we have what I like to call a giant block of concrete and epoxy. So there's a couple spots that I'm not too thrilled with, like right in here, these spots up here, maybe this right here. And in order to remedy that, I'm going to try using an epoxy stick. Don't know if this is going to work. I think in theory it's going to work. There's also one more spot though that really does need some attention, and that is this giant crater in here. I'm going to stand this thing up this way, and I'm going to do one final pour in there to hopefully fill that. So between the epoxy stick and that fill, I think tomorrow or the next day I should be able to do another sand, because right now I've just been sanding with 60 grit to get this thing knocked down. I gotta do the 120, the 220, and get this thing to be nice looking. But for right now, that is where we're at. Let's do this pour here with the epoxy stick, and then wait a few more days. Let's do some epoxy sticking. I am very dusty. Never used one of these? Okay. So cut to desired. Oh, I have no idea. That looks like a good desired cut. Don't know. I need it. Because I do need it. I need it to make this thing not look so silly. I hope I can sand this stuff. Because I don't know if that's possible either. That could be a disaster. Alright, epoxy is getting ready to be mixed. I'm going to put a little bit of graphite color in there. Just because, again, apparently at some point this stuff can yellow up on you. And the dogs are barking in the background, because that's just what they do. Forgot to wear gloves when I did the epoxy, so my fingers are sticky now. Alright, I'll finish stirring this up, and then you can watch me pour it in there. And after hours, and I do mean literally hours of sanding, we are ready to put a clear coat on this thing. This could go terribly wrong. I could be jumping the gun, and I might need to be sanding more. I'm hoping not. Only one way to find out. I'll spray some clear on this thing and make it shiny and pretty. Alright, it has been sprayed, so now we're going to have to do what we've been doing this whole time. Work on it for 20 minutes, and then wait for stuff to dry. Alright, this could go one of two ways with most of this thing. It could go really well or really bad. So far we've been lucky. I'm going to give this thing a quick wax. That's what we're supposed to do. I have automotive wax. We're going to try that. And I'm doing it on the bottom in case something goes wrong, then I can obviously not do it to the top. I'm going to try to buff this thing out, and then after that, we'll finally be done. Alright, so after another hour of polishing and wet sanding, shouldn't have wet sanded it in the long run because it took a lot of the nice crystal polish off of it, and because I had already put paste wax and liquid wax and spray wax on it, I didn't think putting another coat of clear on it would work as well. But with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the Urban River Table. I love how this thing turned out. The idea that I had with the concrete and the epoxy, I think, established itself. It worked. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. The top isn't crystal smooth like it should be. The edges are all kind of rickety because my molds didn't work out well because of the problems that I had. Now, the guys that I watch on YouTube who do these epoxy table builds and stuff like that are Blacktail Studio and John Malecki. If you want to see them build a really cool one, I'm just saying, if you call them out on it, they'll have to build one. And it'd probably be better than mine, and that'd probably hurt my feelings, but I'd still watch the videos anyway. So, with that being said, this thing was amazing. I will see you guys on the next project.